Welcome to Contemporary Black Voices, where we cover the most pressing issues facing our community. Today, joining me on the sofa, we have the ever-brilliant and insightful Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell, the ever-brilliant and insightful businessman, entrepreneur, and community activist, Mr. Chris Dawkins, and the always brilliant and insightful Professor Fred Williams. Today is Professor Williams' birthday, folks, so be sure to wish him a happy birthday in the comments. We also want to acknowledge our fourth musketeer, our wizard, our tech guru behind the scenes, Mr. Carl Booker. Without Carl, none of this would be possible. Through multiple media streams, he educates, informs, and gives voice to our community. Today's topic is tragic, but sadly not uncommon. We're going to discuss the murder of Jordan Neely, the young man who had the life suffocated out of him on a New York subway train while having his hands held down and his murder recorded on video. We're going to talk about no one coming to this young man's aid, not only that day, but prior to the tragedy. We're going to talk about Black folks and mental health, how we are invisible due to mental health issues, while at the same time living in a skin that makes society view us as hyper predators. We're going to talk about America's refusal to have a reckoning with its racist past and white America's psychological and historical need to police and control Black bodies. And we're going to talk about the uneven application of criminal justice in this country. Neely's murderer, like Trayvon Martin's, like Ahmaud Arbery's, was interviewed and released. And when the system finally decided to charge him, they charged him with not first-degree murder, not second-degree murder, not even first-degree manslaughter, but second-degree manslaughter, which ties the jury's hands. It limits the sentence that he can get and makes him eligible for parole. Joining us today to cover these issues and more is the brilliant Dr. Brenya Chumasi. Dr. Chumasi is a national award-winning professor of law, psychology, and criminal justice, and I can think of no better person to cover today's topic. Dr. Chumasi, I thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Contemporary Black Voices.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
And so jumping right in to the topic, and I do want to cover the media aspect of this, and how every time you see Jordan Neely mentioned, they mention him as being homeless and the images that provokes. And every time they talk about Daniel Perry, his murderer, they talk about him as being a Marine vet. And so I definitely want to touch on that. But just overall, just your thoughts on today's topic.
Thank you. Today's topic is a very distressful one because we keep on seeing our young Black men being attacked publicly and murdered. And again, it happened last week. A wonderful, bright young man who may have had some issues like most all people have was murdered in plain sight, public subway, as onlookers looked on. And it is horrific and unconscionable. And I'm glad we're here to talk about it today.
Thank you. And Dr. Chadwell, did you want to?
Well, you know, yes, they are portraying Daniel Penny as a Marine. So I went back and, looked at some background on him as a Marine. Who is this man? Well, he was only in the Marine for 4 years. He was, I guess, deployed to the Mediterranean, but he got a good conduct award from the Marines. So I went up to look up what that award was like. What was that about? And a good conduct award is awarded every 3 years to someone who has, maintained a mission, of the organization. So we're not talking about someone who has been in the Marines a long time. Short time as far as I'm concerned. But they're making an emphasis on Jordan Neely's past. They're not looking at him as a victim. They went straight to his past as if he was wrong for even being present at the time. So I guess the question I want to ask you is this. Is the killing of Black men become white supremacy's gladiator sport?
All right, so that's a heavy topic right there. Thank you. Let me see if I can address that. So it seems like, yes, it's become a gladiator sport with non-participants because we Black folk are not participating in that sport whatsoever.
Right.
And that's one reason we're here to talk about it. So we emphasize that, no, we are not a sport to be watched. We're not being watched. And what the others do with that, they got to stop, whether it is a sport or not. Now, just as you did with Penny, the Marine, well, I'd like to talk in a little bit, in a few minutes, with you about that so-called sport that he already premeditated that he did. And I'd like to talk to you about that in terms of legal, because there are a lot of misinformation, lots of myths going on about legal that we then follow in the flow, which is done purposefully. And I won't go into why it's done purposely or who does it purposefully, but it's done purposely on the media so that we then all follow the initial flow. So we need to bring it back, and speak our truth.
Okay. So we'll definitely revisit that and give you an opportunity to talk about that. Professor Williams, did you have a question for Dr. Chemazi?
In 2020, we saw a white cop with his knee in the neck of a black man, and they showed it on TV until he died. This time, they show this honky with this black man in a chokehold, and they showed it on Cuomo's show on News Nation. While he was talking about it, he had it on the show. And so I guess it took about 15 minutes. And so he showed about 15 minutes. Now, here's the deal. Let's all picture for a second. This is a black man with a white boy in a whole chokehold like that. Or it's a black cop with his knee in the neck of a white boy. Would they show that? Would they show it the same way they do with us? It's almost like, you could say, people could say, oh, I'm so sorry for that black boy. And I don't know, I'm sick and tired of it. I don't know how you feel, but I'm sick and tired. I won't watch it anymore. I started to send an email to Cuomo saying, what the hell are you doing, man? There are young kids looking at this.
Kind of goes back to my thing about the gladiator sport.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And then, so you saw, as far as conditioning, right? And that, I know we had talked a little bit about, you were asking about conditioning. By showing that kind of film all the time and that being portrayed in the media.
Right. So what do you think
About the conditioning?
Yeah.
Conditioning's a real thing. The way our brain works, we learn, all of us human beings, without exception, we learn through conditioning. So the word condition is very heavy. And the conditioning of what you described has an effect on what you were saying earlier about the our young children, all races, but particularly we're talking about our Black young children, young boys. So by the time they reach kindergarten, first grade, third grade, they're already being conditioned to expect what they're seeing because of the way the brain operates with the axons and dendrites and transmitters and so on.
Is that good? I think I know the answer. That's probably a rhetorical question. Is that good?
Good in this case with George Floyd and Neely?
All the cases.
In all the cases, unconscionably and terrible and bad, has a bad effect on us. And that's what I mean about the protracted trajectory of the flow. It's done purposefully. And I don't want to go into that now, but it's done purposefully. The audience has to know where the flow of how to condition the person viewing. It's almost like marketing. So the first marketing piece that goes on the media, mainstream media, alternative media, is one that's grabbed a hold of and spread on purpose, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, Chris, you have a comment?
Yeah, but I don't know if they want to hear from me. Look, to me, there's a bigger problem than we are addressing. I think Dr. Chadwell has alluded to it, and I think Fred has kind of alluded to it. But the real issue is not what's happened to that particular man. It's what's happening to us as a race. We are the ones who need to be dealing with this because it's not going to stop unless we take ownership of it and figure out a way as to how we're going to deal with it. And until we do that, we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, okay? I mean, the people in New York, they've already gotten by it from the standpoint of when they see things like this, any of you who've been to New York, when you see stuff like that, it ain't unusual. You just step over the person and keep going or whatever. That's the way New York is. But when it comes to black folks and what's happening in America and the killing of black men over and over again, the situation that's going on with DeSantis down in Florida, all of these different things are black issues that we need to deal with. And to me, we can't deal with it until we come together as a whole to be able to deal with it. Now answer that.
Okay, so as you know, I always speak about us coming together as a whole.
Okay.
And being unified and supporting each other. So I'm here today to talk about that because I act on it. As I know those of us here today act on it. We don't just talk. Right now we're talking to give out the message, but we do work. We do hard work. We do decades of work on this issue. And so we do well to support each other so that those decades of work turn into decisions.
Well, let me ask about the American black person first. I mean, and we'll get back to Neely and so forth. But can we really effectively address this without some kind of leadership between ourselves to decide what we're going to do about this together?
And I like that question because we do talk about who our leaders are. So we have a lot of leaders in our community. We have leaders right here, sitting here. Each one of us is a leader. And we leaders have our different circles and cohorts of those we lead. And I think between us, we have thousands of people that we've helped and support as leaders. So we need to support each other to then put forward, which you're doing already successfully, put forth those of us who are leaders in our black community here in the United States, who are specialized in certain areas, put them forth nationally. So for example, I know that my colleagues at the different places I work do put forth myself nationally to help make action and changes. I lobbied in Annapolis long ago, and I was one of 3 people who put on our state and federal forms the word other. Before it didn't have the word other, and we got it put on so you can check it off and put what you want in there. And it was easy to do. So use us people where our specialty is easy for us, right? And let's get together, let's have meetings and do this. And
So
we do the
one
action.
last pushback on that, you know, because my son talks about, he says, you know, Dad, I would love to do a boycott. He said, but if somebody said, quote unquote, for Neely, we're going to boycott Walmart. He said, you're not going to go to work that day, or you're not going to shop at Walmart that day. And he says, I would be willing to do that. He said, but how do I know I'm not going to be the only person doing that? And to me, that's where the leadership comes from, is that we have to have somebody who kind of nationally says, this is the action we're going to do, this is what we're going to take, and this is how it's going to be dealt with. But dealing with it, and I think as blacks, we like to say we're going to deal with these things on a local level. But now I think we need a national level, because these things are happening in different cities, different states. All these things are happening, and we seem to be getting taken advantage of because we never pushed back. And it's time for us to begin to push back.
So we're going to stick a pin in that question, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about that in our next segment. And we're also going to talk about Jordan Neely. He existed in a space where his mental health condition made him invisible to society, but the color of his skin made him a hyper predator to much of society. So we're going to visit that space. We're going to also visit Chris's question when we come back. Okay.
Okay, well,